investing in property makes sense. Investing in the right property takes knowledge. Welcome to the Rewarding Property Decisions podcast. I'm Jared McCabe, Director of Wakeland Property Advisory. Join me for expert insights into the fundamentals, trends and opportunities to help you create long-term wealth through smart property decisions. Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 27 of the Rewarding Property Decisions podcast. So we're into part 3 now of our 3-part series on the investment grade apartment market. Previous 2 topics have been around the state of the market and undercapitalising versus overcapitalising. And as we said, that one sort of leads into our 3rd topic, which is how and where to add value to your apartment and the benefits of obviously doing so. Now I'm joined again by Jordan Telford. Jordan, welcome back.
Hi, Jared.
So what I thought we'd start today is by looking at overall apartment market, presentation, works that can be done, how we can add value to them. So if we start on the outside and look at things from an external perspective first, do you want to run us through some of the things that can be done on an external side of things? Because obviously you don't, unlike a house, have complete control over that. You're working with others. It's why you've been possibly able to get into that market in the first instance, because it's a more affordable sector. But obviously part of that is then needing to work with others to make sure that you all benefit from the presentation of an apartment block.
Yeah, sure. Well, having established with our last podcast, Jared, the importance not to have an undercapitalised property, well, that then leads into this discussion as to, well, how do I bring it up to a standard where it's not undercapitalised, it's in perfect balance? Well, I with apartments, I always divide it up into the externals, which there is a certain semblance of control, but not as much as internal. And also, once you step through the front door of your apartment, what can you control there and what should be done? So if we look at externally,
this sort of, sorry to cut across you, but this goes to, again, the point that you raised in the last podcast around the external is something that you can really differentiate yourself with from the more modern, larger development, and the benefit of being in the more boutique, small development.
Yeah,
that's the external side of things.
Absolutely. And central to that, with a lot of the older apartments, is the advantage they have of having been built with a little bit of garden surrounds. Rather than just being concrete and steel, and a bit unapproachable in a way. So, but too often these garden surrounds have been let go. And it's not hard to have them let go, particularly over summertime, over drought periods, etc. But that's an important first impression, not only for renters, and therefore your marketability to renters, but also with an eye to selling the property. First impressions count with a lot of things. So consider the garden surrounds, the lawns, garden beds maintained, are the trees pruned? Does it just have a nice inviting feel when you walk through the front gate? Does the block look cared for? Window frames, balconies, are the timber window frames starting to be tatty, and are they needing, that could be a red flag to a potential buyer. Oh, okay. They're going to have to be replaced at some point, so that can reduce the marketability of it. But you don't have to replace the window frames every 10, 15 years. And if they're actually maintained, painted and cared for, well,
it'll be possibly a one-off expense, won't it? Or you may not even cop it because someone else has done it previously.
Exactly, security doors, do they work? Too often you walk through, people can't be bothered. But that can be a big, particularly for ground floor apartments, that can be a big issue for renters. Security lighting, the internal stairwell walls, for instance. As people walk through the front door, what are they greeted with? Is it scuffed? Is it dirty? Are the carpets on the stairs, are they frayed? Are they stained? It's not a great first impression. You can do all you want on the internals, but if that first impression isn't right, that brings the block down and people can turn on their toes and just walk away. So those are the things that are important to maintain. There
was a good example of all the things you've just mentioned there, one that we talk about quite regularly, of the refurbishment, particularly externally, of a block in George Street in East Melbourne.
And they've been done so well.
They had a magnificent job, and it was all of the things that you've just said then is where it lacked before this was done. And it was a brick block, but it was a painted brick block, and it hadn't been painted for a long time. So it had a painting done externally, but then the entrance, it's a U-shaped block, this one. So the entrance was fairly tatty with gardens and things. They stripped that garden back. They stripped back the paving and they put a nice new entrance in there. They put these great gardens down either side. They put new windows in the 3 entry foyers that are there. It looks like a totally different block.
It does, and importantly, it's been maintained.
Yeah.
They spent a lot of money, the Owners Corporation. They should be congratulated for it. It
Yep.
took them a long time, but they've been sensible in not just letting it be. They've maintained it, and it's a totally different block.
Yeah.
And that's been reflected in not only the rental demand in that block, but also the sales that we've seen
Yes.
over the last few years since then.
Yep.
There's a measurable difference.
I remember buying an apartment in that block just before it had been done. We bought an investment property in that block for a client, and the apartment itself hadn't been renovated. It was very basic, a 1-bedroom, but the works had been paid for. The garden and everything that was to be done had been paid for by the previous owner. So the client we purchased it for got all the benefits. Yep.
Yeah, that's good. So externals, as I said, you've got a certain level of control there, but understandably you're not the mercy of, but these are Owners Corporation expenses.
But that sort of goes to the next level too in terms of adding value around being involved.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, no one says you've got to be on the committee. If you would like to be and you've got the appetite for it, it's a good thing to do. But at an absolute minimum, you need to attend your Owners Corp meetings.
Yeah,
it's
once a year.
One meeting a year for an hour or two.
Yeah.
But it can change the total nature of your property.
Yeah. Now, it might be unrealistic for some people, particularly if they're sitting overseas or they're in regional Victoria, for instance, or interstate. That might be very, very difficult. But what you do is you appoint a proxy.
Yeah.
So if that's somebody local who can make some decisions on your behalf at the meeting, or maintain a relationship with the Owners Corp manager. Speak to them prior to, lay out what you would like done to the block, and have it an agenda, have them as agenda items, and you can appoint the Owners Corp manager as your proxy, with a clear understanding as to what you would like to see done to the block. The interesting thing about it too is that, and I've been to a number of these myself, where a quorum has to be established at an Owners Corp meeting in order to pass decisions. More often than not, what I'm finding is that quorums aren't established. Only one party turns up, or 2 or 3, even in a block of 12 to 16. So if quorum isn't established, the 1 or 2 members that do turn up can have an awful lot of influence and power over the decisions of the Owners Corporation.
Yep.
So anything that is decided upon the evening of the meeting become interim decisions unless they're challenged by, I think it's 25% of the entitlement holders.
And that's, they've got what period? They've got about 28 days?
29 days.
29
from
days.
the day of the meeting.
Yep.
So my view has always been, if people can't be bothered turning up or appointing a proxy, they're probably not going to object to the decisions made on the night.
Yep.
They're probably thankful that somebody is actually taking the time to do that on their behalf. But
gives you a lot of control.
A lot of control, and that's the criticism of Owners Corporations, in that people don't feel that they're in control, unlike, say, with a house, because they have to deal with other people, and that is in a lot of cases true. But if you are motivated, you can make some significant changes to the direction of your Owners Corporation, and in effect spending everybody else's money, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the next part of that is then, how do you fund that sort of thing? Because not everyone's in the same position. And that's, I guess, one of the things with an Owners Corporation is you'll have some people that are ready to spend 10 grand in one hit, and you'll have others that'll say, no, look, I can't do that.
Yeah, it's being proactive. And having a good Owners Corp manager and working closely with your Owners Corp manager. So that's looking 2 to 5 years ahead, saying, what are the likely expenses here? And if you do things periodically, then you're not going to get those big $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in a lot of cases. Now, there are some things that are unavoidable. So sometimes window frames, if they're 50 years old, they just need replacing, and that's significant. The roofs, they need replacing once every 50 years as well.
But so do houses.
True. Yeah, true.
So people get caught up in, I have to do, but I guarantee you, if you own a house versus owning an apartment, the expenses, which are solely yours rather than being split with others, are going to be far greater.
Yeah, for sure.
And people sometimes do lose track of that a house will cost you a lot more to maintain because you've got to do the lot.
Yeah, exactly. So there's 2 options really, and that's be proactive, get ahead of any upcoming expenses and strike a maintenance levy. and just contribute year by year.
Yeah.
So and that's an easy way of doing it.
Yeah. But it's usually working towards something too, isn't it? Sometimes you find that some of these smaller blocks can have these quite significant maintenance funds that they're charging on an annual basis, but there's not really anything that they're working towards. And so you can then find that you're contributing this money and then you may not actually see the benefit of it because it may be spent after you've sold your property.
Exactly.
So that's worthwhile in the larger developments where you've got to maintain a lift that's going to break down every so often and has to have money spent, and you can't have trying to strike a special levy with 200 occupants. But with a small boutique block, if you're contributing to an annual levy, it needs to be working towards something.
It absolutely has to. And that's the idea of the levy, because you can contribute over a period of 5 years many thousands of dollars. If you come to sell the property before those works are commissioned, you can't extract those monies out.
Yep.
That's there for the benefit of the next party.
Yep.
So that a levy should be struck with the idea of a particular project in mind. The alternative, as I've seen over the last few years too, is there's, I think Macquarie Bank offer a product where they in effect issue a loan to the owners corporation.
Okay.
And that's an alternative, particularly when there's big ticket items. So that's something to explore as well, which that wasn't a product offered 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, great.
So there's a couple of alternatives there.
All right, so let's have a look then if we move inside the apartment, which is where we've got absolute control with an apartment as an apartment owner. What are some of the things that are almost must-haves from an apartment perspective, and what are the ways that we can add value, but not, as we spoke about last time, overcapitalise?
Yeah, that's it. Again, understanding the expectations of tenants and buyers in your particular market, the market with which your apartment resides in.
And they can be different too. So what a renter might expect versus what an owner might expect can be two different things.
Yeah.
So you need to have a bit of a plan, I guess, as to what you're going to do yourself. So are you doing these works with the expectation of holding the property for another 5 to 10, 15 years? Or are you doing these works in order to sell the property within a year or two? And
if that's the case, you probably wouldn't go as far. You'd be far more judicious about the areas where you spend your money and how much you spend it.
Yep.
If you're going to hold it for the very much long term, 10 to 15 years, well, you can afford to do it at a higher standard.
Yeah, so that it won't need to be replaced again anytime soon.
No, and it will still hold up and look good when the time comes to sell, if that's in a 15-year time frame, for instance. So I'd be looking at, and again, just touching on our last podcast there, the expectations have certainly increased in terms of the level and standard of expected comfort levels. So certain things have been forced upon owners of apartments now. Rental providers, to use the new term.
Yes.
Heating is a must. As of March last year, some significant changes to the Residential Tenancies Act. Living rooms have to have heating. Well, instead of putting heaters in, you just do it properly. You put a split system in.
Yeah,
They've actually come down in price.
They have. The only thing you've got to be mindful of there, again, with your owner's corporation, is where do you put the inverter? And there can be difficulties around that. So that's, again, something to look at as to where are the options. And it's something that owners' corporations need to be mindful of themselves these days, because they can have been a little belligerent in past in terms of no, but it's because it's a requirement of the Act now. From a heating perspective, they may try and avoid it, but it's an expectation that a lot of renters have. You need to be able to offer that to the owners of the building. Yeah.
If the time's coming to do a renovation to the bathroom, well, have a look and see if there aren't any internal laundry facilities. And those, they're more and more the minority now, but typically with older style 30s and 40s where it was a communal laundry, bringing laundry facilities in is a really good way to add some value to it. So that if the bathroom is such that where you've got a bath and a shower, well, look at reconfiguring it so you can jettison the bath. And that can be the spot where the laundry facilities go. And more often than not, in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, a bath is a nice to have, but it's not a must have.
Or you don't, if you do really want the bath yourself, if you're an owner occupier, shower over a bath, and then you've still got where the shower was to put the washing machine and washing machine facility. So,
and if the kitchen's of a reasonable enough size, you can put a washing machine in the kitchen.
The old English approach, absolutely.
So the usual suspects: coat of paint, new carpet / floating floor, whatever suits. I've seen a couple of balconies as well that have got a really nice touch to it, where there's a raised timber decking, rather than just the concrete, the tatty concrete, painted concrete.
Yep.
Well, the raised timber decking
Just gives a
it's
nice finish.
Nice finish, yeah. It's, so that can really stand out. Doesn't cost an awful lot of money. If time comes to do a significant renovation to the kitchen, well, new bench tops, plenty of cupboard space. And increasingly, what I'm advising clients is to, in a way, future-proof your kitchen by putting a dishwasher in.
Yep.
Sounds crazy, even in a one-bedroom apartment, but the expectations have risen to such a level where that is becoming an expectation of tenants, that there is a dishwasher.
Yep.
Again, not that long ago, well, who needs it in a one-bedroom apartment?
But it's not
dishes.
it's not a great expense either. It's not like you'd be concerned about it. And it may not be that you get an extra $10 a week by having it, but it may mean that you get an extra applicant on a tenancy application.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So the benefits of all of that, external, internal works as well, an immediate uplift in rent.
Yep.
And shorter time on the market.
So it obviously reduces your potential vacancy period by having that quality fit out.
Yeah, and like attracts like. If
Yeah.
you present a property to a prospective tenant, for instance, in good, clean, modern condition, chances are they'll appreciate that and they'll look after it and will probably become more medium to long-term tenants rather than somebody that's jumping from one to another, just seeking out,
Yep.
a cut price rental.
Yeah.
And which adds to the costs, vacancy costs, releasing costs.
So have you got a quick example of something that we've worked with a client on in recent times?
Yeah, one in South Yarra last year, actually, a big one-bedroom apartment. It's a lovely one. Before, it was in fairly original condition, and the time had come. Our client had established their need to or their want to retain the property for a period of time. So we thought, all right, let's do it, and let's do it properly. Do it once and once only. Market rent in its current condition was roughly around about $350 a week, based on others within this particular block in original condition. After a renovation that cost just shy of $33,000, it leased for $410 a week, a couple of months. The whole process was maybe about a 3-month downtime.
Yep.
So that extra $60 a week, when you look at what was actually invested by way of the total expense, it's a significant return on that investment.
Yeah.
Sort of in the order of 9.5%. So it's worth doing. And then you've got the ancillary benefits, as we've discussed, about the improved marketability of the property. Obviously the uplift in capital value, which will benefit this client when the time comes in 10 years' time to sell the property. It was done to a nice standard and it will hold its own.
It'll only require maintenance from here on in. It's not going to need
probably
anything
paint.
significant.
Yeah. Maybe carpet paint, yeah. So it makes sense in terms to invest that money if you can. And again, not everybody can put their hands on $30,000 to $40,000.
No.
So there are issues there, but perhaps a refinance to incorporate that expense can be done. There's potentially ways.
There's ways to do it, to look at it. Yeah. And in terms of the capital value, do you have any rough ideas as to what it was worth pre and post? I mean, it was probably. I know that block and that apartment and unrenovated, it was probably in the high fives, maybe tipped over 6.
Yeah.
But you'd have to think it would be at least mid to high 6s on a renovated product.
Yeah, it should. What has been spent should have added
Yeah.
at least that amount in capital value,
Yeah.
probably a bit more,
Yeah.
if only for the improved marketability
Yeah.
of that to bring buyers to the front door.
Because it is a big. We talk about one-bedroom apartments, but it is a big apartment, and it's got a very, very good outlook as well.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So I think that the alternative to this approach is, well, as a lot of people take, and that's quite clear-eyed, they say, well, I understand the benefits to it, but I'm doing nothing.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm prepared to cop the reduced rent, the longer period of time on the market for whatever reason.
Yep.
So that's a strategy, is a do-nothing approach.
Yep.
And that's understandable in some cases. The problem with that, though, is that you run a danger of reaching a point where when you're bringing the property to the rental market, if a property isn't leasing within 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks at the maximum, there's something not quite right.
Yep.
So the knee-jerk reaction is to, well, we reduce the rent and we keep reducing until we hit the sweet spot.
Yep.
And then bang, it goes. The problem is you can reach a point where you actually undershoot your local market.
Yep.
So say, for instance, suburb like Hawthorn or Kew, there's a rump of prospective tenants that have, say, $400 to spend, $420, $450. And they can spend that, and they can spend it comfortably, but the expectation is a certain level and standard of accommodation.
Fit out, yep.
You can offer that market an entirely original apartment at $360 or $370, and they may not be interested.
Yep.
So you drop it to $350, you drop it to $340, and that isn't offering the incentive for people to jump in.
Because there's no one who's looking for that apartment at $350 a week in that location.
Exactly. They've got a greater capacity.
Yep.
A comfortable capacity to spend, and they're happy to spend that on the right accommodation. So that's where that old approach of just reducing, yes, it can. That's
You'll get to a point where you will find someone, but you could have a far longer period of vacancy than you really should have.
Yeah, exactly. So it's understanding your market, what the expectations are, and what their propensity and capacity to spend is.
Yep.
If we're looking at the rental market.
Yeah. No, that's great. Really good overviews too, and some really good case studies there to sort of paint a picture as to why spending the money is beneficial. And as always, we are very mindful that not everyone's in a position to be able to do it. So it is a case of making sure that if you don't have the capacity to spend that money in one hit, that you do it on a semi-regular basis. The ideal is to really, after every time a renter moves out, whether that's after they've only stayed for one 12-month tenancy or they've been there for 10 years, you need to sit back and look at the property and say, what do I need to do? I don't have to renovate the kitchen and bathroom every time, but it might be this time I need to replace the carpet. And the next time I'll give it a coat of paint. The next time I need to put in a new sink or do something slightly different, and it may be a new vanity unit in the bathroom or add split system air conditioner. But if you do something bit by bit every time, and if it's only after 12 months, it's probably going to be minor. But if you've had a renter that's been in the property for 10 years, then yes, you've had the benefit of no vacancy period, secure income coming in, but now it's time to spend some money because that renter has moved on, and what they were prepared to live with, the market now perhaps isn't. And so therefore you've got to bring it up to that standard. And that's not just from a rental point of view, that's maintaining that capital value and adding value to the property from a capital value point of view, but also from a rental income point of view.
Yeah. Help the property drive its growth.
Help me help you. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us for episode 27 of the Rewarding Property Decisions podcast. A special thanks to Jordan for joining me for the last 3-part series, and we'll certainly have him back for different topics along the way. As always, please share the podcast with friends, family and colleagues and anyone who may have an interest in property. And if you'd like further information on how to make rewarding property decisions, please visit our website, wakeland.com.au, and we wish you all the best with your property decisions.